Maya returned 3 days later, this time with a crate of fresh fruit and a small potted plant. She called a peace offering. Lyra watched from the upper gantry as the iron lark docked again, its hull still patched but cleaner now, as if someone had taken pride in it. Kyle sat beside her, his tail flicking slowly, his eyes fixed on the airlock. He did not growl, but his scales had shifted to a cautious green. She keeps coming back, Lyra murmured. Kale made a low rumbling sound. Not quite a purr, not quite a warning. Lyra descended the metal stairs, her armor clicking softly with each step. Maya was already inside the bay, unpacking the crate. She looked up and smiled like she had been expecting her. Brought you something that doesn't come in a can. Peaches fresh from hydroponic dome. 7 on Cirrus. Lyra stared at the fuzzy orange fruit in Maya's hand. She had not seen real fruit since the fall of Eldarai. Do not eat like that anymore, she said. You used to, though, right? Lyra did not answer. But she did not walk away either. Maya placed the peach on a nearby console and stepped back, as if giving her space to decide. Over the next few weeks, Maya came almost every other day. Sometimes with food, sometimes with tools, sometimes with nothing but herself. She never asked to go deeper into the ship, never pried about the past. She just fixed things that were broken, shared stories about her travels, or sat quietly while Lyra walked the hall. She brought a small music player and played an old Earth song, something soft with a woman singing about rivers and rain. Lyra stood very still, listening, the melody weaving through the empty corridors like a ghost of something lost. Kale began to greet her at the airlock, his scales turning a steady blue. Whenever she arrived, he even let her scratch behind his horns once. Though he watched her hand the whole time, Lyra noticed other changes too. She found herself waiting near the comms panel. Before Maya's scheduled arrival, she caught herself smoothing her hair before opening the channel. She even began to leave the observation blister light on at night, as if to say, someone is home. One evening, as Maya worked on recalibrating a faulty oxygen sensor, she said, you know, most people think armor is for protection, but sometimes it becomes a cage. Lyra looked up from the console she was monitoring. How do you mean? Well, Maya said, wiping her hands on her trousers. If you never take it off, you start to forget what it feels like to be soft, to be touched. To just be. Lyra turned back to the screen, but her fingers paused over the keys. I am not soft. No one is all the time, Maya said gently. But everyone needs to be sometimes. That night, Lyra dreamed of her mother's hands braiding her hair before her first battle, the scent of star blossom oil, the sound of laughter in the great hall. She woke with tears drying on her cheeks, and Kale pressed against her side, his warmth a silent comfort. The next time Maya came, Lyra was waiting in the bay without her helmet. For the first time, Maya saw her face fully, high cheekbones, silver eyes, and skin like pale moonlight. Maya did not stare, did not comment. She just nodded and said, Hey, hey. Lyra replied the word, feeling strange but not unwelcome on her tongue. They spent the day repairing a damaged relay in the engine room, working side by side in comfortable silence. Lyra found herself watching Maya's hands, the way they moved with purpose. The small scar across her knuckles, the way she hummed when she concentrated. You are good at this, Lyra said. Maya shrugged. My dad taught me everything he knew before he passed, said the best way to honor someone is to keep their lessons alive. Lyra thought of her own teachers, her bond, sisters, her mother's voice echoing in the halls of the temple. I have no one left to honor, she said quietly. Maya stopped working and looked at her. You honor them by living. Lyra looked away, but something in her chest loosened just a little. Weeks turned into months. Maya's visits became longer sometimes. She stayed overnight, sleeping in the bay on a cot she brought with her. Lyra began to share small things. Memories of Eldaran festivals, the taste of skyberries, the way the twin moons looked over the crystal forest. One night during a solar storm, the whisper of dusks, shields flickered and failed for several minutes, alarms blared. Red lights flashed and the temperature dropped fastly. Removed quickly, sealing bulkheads, rerouting power. But the strain was too much. She had not slept properly. In days her body pushed beyond its limits as she reached for a manual override. Her legs gave out, she collapsed to her knees, gasping, her vision swimming. Maya was there in an instant, dropping to her side. Lyra tried to push her away. I am fine. You are. Not, Maya said firmly. Your systems are fried, and so are you. She placed a hand on Lyra's armored shoulder, her touch warm even through the metal. It Me help you take it off. Lyra froze. No one had touched her armor in over a century. No one had even asked, "Cannot, why not?" Because Lyra whispered, "Because if I take it off, I might not be able to put it back on." Maya was quiet for a long moment, then she said, "Maybe you don't need to, Lyra." Looked at her eyes wide with something like fear. "What if I fall apart then? I will be here to catch you." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that settled deep in Lyra's bones. Slowly she nodded. Maya worked carefully, her fingers finding the hidden clasps along the spine, the ones only an Eldarin would know. But Lyra guided her with soft words and gentle gestures. The armor came apart piece by piece, vambraces, pauldrons, chest plate, each one clinking softly as it hit the floor until finally Lyra stood in a simple undertunic. Her body trembling not from cold, but from exposure. She had not felt air on her skin in so long it was overwhelming. Maya did not look away, did not gawk. She just reached into her pack and pulled out a thick wool blanket and wrapped it around Lyra's shoulders. "There you go." Lyra sank to the floor, her back against the console, tears streaming down her face, silent at first, then shaking with sobs she had held back for 100 years. Kale came down from his perch and curled around her, his warmth a steady presence. Maya sat beside her, not too close, but close enough to share the space. She did not speak, did not try to fix it. She just let Lyra cry. After a long time, the storm passed. The light stabilized and the ship hummed back to life. Lyra wiped her face with the edge of the blanket, her eyes red but clear. "Thank you," she said. Maya smiled. "You're welcome." They sat in silence, watching the stars return through the viewport. "I forgot what it felt like," she said after a while, "to be held. You are not alone anymore," Maya said softly. Lyra looked at her, then at Kale, then at the stars. And for the first time in a century she believed it might be true. In the days that followed, Lyra did not put the armor back on. She wore simple clothes. Maya brought her soft trousers and tunics in muted colors. She even let Maya braid her hair one morning. The way her mother used to. Kale seemed lighter too. His scales often a calm blue or warm gold. He followed Maya around like a curious puppy, though he still kept one eye on Lyra at all times. One afternoon, as they shared a meal of stew and bread, Maya said, "You know, the coalition is talking about you." Lyra looked up. "They found records from the last battle. Some of your people's distress signals got logged before the silence. They know the Kthari were behind." Lyra stiffened. The Kthari Dominion, the reptilian empire that had hunted her people to extinction. "They are still out there," she said, "and now they know you are." Lyra stood and walked to the window, her reflection ghostly against the stars. "I am ready," Maya joined her. "But you don't have to face them alone." Returned to her eyes, fierce but no longer cold. "I know." That night Lyra stood in the armory looking at her armor. It still gleamed faintly, the runes pulsing softly as if waiting for her. She reached out and touched the chest plate, then stepped back. "Not yet," she whispered. Instead she went to the workshop where Maya was tinkering with a new power converter. "Can you help me?" she asked. "With what?" "I want to rebuild the armor, but not the way it was. I want it to be stronger, faster, and I want it to carry human tech too." Maya grinned. "Now you are speaking my language." They worked through the night, combining Eldarin moonsteel with human alloys, weaving ancient runes with modern circuitry. Kale watched from a corner, his eyes bright with anticipation as the first light of a distant star touched the hull. Lyra placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. "You have given me more than repairs," she said. "You have given me back my voice." Maya covered her hand with her own. "Then let's make sure the galaxy hears it." Outside, the whisper of dusk floated quiet and strong, and for the first time in a long time full of hope. The news spread faster than starlight. A living Eldarin had been seen, not in myth, not in old war logs, but real and breathing, aboard a human freighter near the Andromeda Veil. The Galactic Coalition scrambled to confirm it, while fringe groups whispered of omens and prophecies. But not all who heard were curious. On the edge of Kthari space, deep in the black where no star dared shine, a command vessel stirred, its obsidian hull bristling with weapon spines and sensor arrays. It bore the mark of the Silent Claw, the elite hunters who had led the purge of the Eldarans centuries ago. Their leader Vosk, the Last Fang, received the report with cold fury. He had believed the job finished, every Eldarin dead, every record burned, every child silenced. Now one remained, and worse, she was with a human. Humans were pests in his eyes, loud, clumsy, and sentimental, but they were also unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. He ordered his fleet to move quietly. No broadcasts, no demands, just a silent approach through the dead zones where sensors failed and comms went dark aboard. The whisper of dusk. Lyra felt it before the alarm sounded. A shift in the air, a pressure in her bones like the calm before a storm. She stood on the command deck, her rebuilt armor gleaming under the soft lights. The human tech woven into the Eldaran design hummed with quiet power. The chest plate now held a fusion core of Maya's design, small but strong enough to power a city kale paced beside her, his scales darkening. To storm gray, his wings half spread, they are coming. Lyra said. Maya entered from the engineering bay, her face smudged with grease but her eyes sharp. She had been reinforcing the shield emitters for days, expecting this. How many? 3 cruisers and a command ship, all Cathari-class silent runners. They will be here in 6 hours. Maya nodded, already moving to the comms console. Then we do not have much time, Liari turned to her. What are you planning? Maya pulled up a star map and pointed to a swirl of gas and dust deep in the nebula. The heart of the veil. Your people left something there, didn't they? Lyra stiffened. How do you know that? I found fragments in the data cores. You let me access. Pieces of songs, star charts, hidden frequencies. It all points to one place, the choir vault. The choir vault was sacred, a hidden network of ancient satellites built not for war but for memory. They held the final song of the Eldaran people, a harmonic broadcast meant to echo through time if ever their civilization fell. My mother's voice is in it, Lyra whispered. Then we wake it up, Maya said. But the vault is dormant. It needs an Eldaran key and a harmonic trigger. You have the key, Lyra. You are the last priestess and I can build the trigger. Lyra looked at her, disbelief and hope warring in her chest. You do not even know what the song sounds like. Maya smiled. I do not need to. I just need to give you a voice. They worked through the night, Maya jury-rigging a broadcast array from spare parts and salvaged coils while Lyra prepared the ritual of activation, her hands tracing the old symbols on the floor of the shrine room. Kale guarded the entrance, his eyes never leaving the shadows. As the first Cathari ship crossed into sensor range, the whisper of dusk powered down all non-essential systems, drifting like another ghost in the graveyard. Vosk watched from his command throne, his reptilian eyes narrow slits of amber. He did not believe in ghosts, but he believed in threats. Scan for life signs, he ordered. Nothing. Sir, just cold metal and dead air, he growled in frustration. Then send the hunters, small boarding craft detached from the cruisers, sleek and silent like blades through water. They carried Cathari shock troops armored in black chitin, their weapons tuned to disrupt Eldaran energy fields. But they never reached the whisper of dusk from the dark Kale struck. He shot from the shadow of a derelict warship, his body wreathed in ionized plasma. His wings spread wide like a storm-given form he slammed into. The lead boarding craft, his claws tearing through the hull like paper. His breath a river of blue fire that melted metal and bone alike. The other craft scattered, but Kale was faster, weaving through debris and fire, his scales flashing from gray to gold to crimson as he fought not with rage but with precision. Every movement a memory of battles passed aboard the whisper of dusk. Lyra stood at the heart of the shrine. Her hands raised, the new armor glowing with inner light. Maya stood behind, her fingers flying over a portable console wired into the ship's core. The Cathari fleet opened fire beams of dark energy lancing through space. But the whisper of dusk held its position, shields flaring under the assault. They are trying to jam us, Maya called out. Then give me more power, Lyra said. Maya rerouted the fusion core directly into the broadcast array, sparks flying from the console, but she did not flinch. Ready when you are, Lyra closed her eyes and began to sing. It was not a song of war, but of remembrance. Each note shaped by centuries of tradition, each tone carrying the names of the lost. Her voice rose through the ship, through the void, through the very fabric of space. And deep in the nebula the choir vault answered. One by one, the ancient satellites powered on their surfaces, blooming with light. They formed a ring around the battlefield and began to echo her song. Not just sound, but data, truth, memory. The full record of the Eldaran genocide encoded in harmonic resonance. The Cathari ship shuddered as the broadcast hit their systems, not as a weapon but as a witness. Every screen, every comms channel, every data pad flooded with images of burning cities, weeping children, and the faces of those they had erased. Vosk roared, in fury, his ship bucking as his own crew turned on him. Some dropping to their knees, others shouting in disbelief aboard the Iron Lark, which had docked silently during the chaos. Maya watched the feed from the satellites, her heart pounding. "It is working," she whisperedly. Ra kept singing, her voice growing stronger, not with anger but with sorrow and truth. Kale returned, then battered and bleeding, one wing torn but his eyes blazing. He landed on the observation deck and pressed his forehead to the glass as if to say, "I am here." The Cathari command ship tried to flee, but the nebula itself seemed to turn against it. Gravitational eddies pulled at its hull sensor. Ghosts led it in circles and the song followed it everywhere. Within the hour, the fleet was broken. 2 cruisers disabled, 1 adrift, and the command ship limping away into the dark silence returned to the Veil. But it was a different kind of silence now. Not empty, but fully. Ra lowered her hands, her voice fading, the last note hanging in the air like a promise. Maya stepped beside her, breathing hard but smiling. "You did it, we did it," Lyra said. They stood together, watching the satellites pulse gently in the distance, their light soft and steady like stars, remembering how to shine. Kyle limped into the shrine room, blood streaking his scales but his head highly. Ra knelt and placed her hands on his neck, her fingers glowing with healing light. "You fought like a star," she murmured. Kale nuzzled her cheek, then turned to Maya and pressed his forehead to hers, a gesture older than words, an oath of bond and trust. Maya froze, then slowly wrapped her arms around his neck. "Guess I am part of the pack now." Lyra smiled, a real smile, small but bright. "Yes, you are." In the days that followed, the broadcast spread across every network in known space. The Coalition launched investigations. The Cathari Dominion faced rebellion from within, and whispers of justice began to stir where only silence had been. But Lyra did not watch the news. She sat, with Maya and Kale, in the garden bay where she had planted the first seeds from Earth and Eldara side by side. "You could be a hero now," Maya said, handing her a cup of tea. Lyra shook her head. "I do not want to be a hero. I just want to be remembered as someone who told the truth." "That is the bravest kind," Maya said. Outside, the stars burned a little brighter and the whisper of dusk sailed on. Not as a tomb, but as a home. On the far edge of the Andromeda Veil, where starlight grew thin and cold, Lyra of the Silver Veil stood alone. She was the last of her kind. A warrior priestess of the Eldaran Enclave, once proud and countless, now reduced to a single soul drifting through the ruins of what had been her people's final sanctuary. Her home was the Whisper of Dusk, a great vessel shaped like a crescent moon, its hull scarred by time and war, its corridors filled with silence so deep it hummed in the bones. Her ship floated in the graveyard of dead stars, surrounded by the broken shells of other Eldaran warships, all that remained of the last stand against the Cathari Dominion. Lyra had not taken off her armor in over 100 years. It was forged from moonsteel, a metal said to be born from the heart of a dying star, and etched with runes that glowed faintly when danger neared. The armor covered her from neck to heel, seamless and smooth like a second skin. It protected her body, but it also held her grief. Locked inside like a tomb beside her always was Kale, her storm-scale dragon, no bigger than a large dog but with eyes that burned like twin suns and scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now they were a deep storm gray, for he sensed her sorrow as clearly as he sensed the cold of space. Kale was more than a pet. He was her bond brother, her last living tie to the world before the silence came. They had fought together, fled together, and survived together when every other Eldaran voice had gone still. Outside the ship, a small human freighter drifted too close to the exclusion zone, marked by ancient buoys that pulsed with warning light. The freighter was battered, its hull patched with mismatched plating and its engines sputtering like an old man's cough. Lyra watched it from the observation blister, her fingers resting on the cool glass. Humans, she thought, they were new to the stars, loud, curious, and reckless. They had only begun exploring deep space a few decades ago, and already they wandered where they did not belong. She expected the usual scavenger to try and loot the dead ships for tech or relics, but this one did not send out drones or scan beams. It just floated there, as if lost or waiting after 3 cycles of silence. Lyra activated a low-power comms channel, her voice rough from disuse. "This is Eldarin sovereign space. You are trespassing. Leave or be purged," instead of panic or static. A calm voice answered, "Hey, sorry about that. My nav system glitched, and I drifted off course. I didn't mean to cross any lines." The voice was female, young and steady. No fear in it, just honesty, Lee. Ra narrowed her eyes. Humans usually lied or begged. She kept her hand near the weapon at her hip, a blade of singing crystal that could cut through steel like paper. "Identify yourself, Maya Rodriguez, captain of the Iron Lark independent freighter. Just hauling spare parts from Proxima. Outpost to the Outer Rim. A lone human woman in a rust bucket freighter." Lyra had seen human ships before, but never one so small or so alone. "Why are you alone?" Maya laughed softly. "Not by choice, but by budget. My crew quit." After the last jump said space was too quiet for them. That made Lyra pause. Too quiet. She knew that feeling well. "You are near a forbidden zone," Lyra said. "If you value your life, you will turn back now." "I see that now," Maya said. "But before I go, can I ask you something, Lee?" Ra did not answer. But she did not cut the channel either. "Are you the only one left?" The question struck. Like a blade between the ribs, Lyra stiffened, her breath catching in her throat. No one had asked that in decades. No one had dared. After a long silence, she whispered, "Yes." Another pause, then Maya said, "Okay, well, thanks for the warning. I'll be on my way. But hey, if you ever need anything, even just someone to talk to, my comms are always open." The channel went quiet. The freighter began to turn its thrusters, firing in short bursts to correct coursely. Ra watched it go, expecting relief, but instead she felt a strange hollowness, like a door had opened inside her and then closed too quickly. Days passed in the same slow rhythm. Lyra walked the empty halls of the Whisper of Dusk, checked the failing systems, spoke to Kale in the old tongue, fed him strips of preserved sky eel, and listened to the hum of the void. But something had changed. The silence now felt heavier, as if it knew it had been noticed. Then on the 7th night, the Iron Lark returnedly. Russ saw it on the long-range sensors, hovering at the edge of the zone, not crossing it, just waiting. She opened the channel before she could stop herself. "Why are you back?" Maya sounded tired but warm. "Hey again. Sorry to bother you, but my coolant line cracked during the jump and I can't fix it alone. I know it's a lot to ask, but do you have any spare parts or maybe just a place to dock for an hour?" Lyra should have said no, should have warned her off again. But the truth was, she was tired of saying no. "Fine," she said, "but you stay in the outer bay. No inner access, and you leave as soon as your ship is fixed." "Thank you." She could hear the smile in Maya's voice. "You won't regret it." The Iron Lark docked with a soft clang. The airlock hissed open and Maya stepped through, wearing a patched flight suit, her dark hair tied back, her hands already smudged with grease. She carried a toolkit slung over one shoulder and moved with the easy confidence of someone who had fixed 1,000 broken things. She stopped a few paces from Lyra and did not look at her armor or her blade. She looked her in the eyes. "Thanks for this, really." Lyra nodded stiffly. "Follow me." She led Maya through the outer maintenance bay, pointing to a junction box that connected to the ship's auxiliary coolant lines. Maya got to work right away, her fingers quick and sure. She didn't ask questions, didn't gawk at the glowing runes on the walls or the strange plants growing in hydroponic pods along the ceiling. Kyle watched from a high perch, his tail twitching, his eyes narrowed. "He doesn't bite unless I say so," Lyra said. Maya glanced up and smiled. "Good to know, but he seems more curious than angry." "How can you tell?" "His scales are turning blue a little around the edges. I read that Eldarin dragons shift color with emotion." Lyra was surprised. "You read about us?" Maya shrugged. "When I heard rumors about the exclusion zone, I looked up everything I could find. Most of it was old military reports or myths, but some of it felt true. Like that your people valued silence more than sound, that you spoke through light and touch. Not just words." Lyra said nothing, but her fingers brushed the edge of her vambrace, a small gesture of acknowledgement. Maya finished the repair in under an hour. She wiped her hands on a rag and stood all set. "Your coolant system is actually way more advanced than mine, by the way." Whoever designed this knew what they were doing. It was my mother's design, Lyra said before she could stop herself. Maya nodded softly. I figured she didn't ask more, didn't push. Just packed her tools and turned to go wait. Lyra said. Maya paused. You said your comms are always open. Yeah, Lyra hesitated, then why? Maya turned fully. Now her expression gentle, because sometimes just knowing someone is out there listening makes the dark feel smaller. Lyra. A look down at her armored hands, then at Kale, who had crept closer, his head tilted. You can stay one more cycle, she said, if you want to rest. Maya smiled. Not a big one, just a small, quiet thing that reached her eyes. Thank you. That night Maya sat on a crate in the bay, sipping from a dented thermos. She offered it to Lyra. It's cocoa with cinnamon and a little nutmeg. My abuela's recipe. Lyra stared at it, then slowly reached out. She had not held anything warm in her hands in years. She took a sip. The taste was sweet and strange and comforting. You eat real food, she asked. Maya laughed. Yeah, every day if I can help it. Space rations are terrible. Lyra sat beside her. Not too close, but close enough to share the warmth of the small heater Maya had set up. They did not speak much after that, just sat in the quiet watching the stars through the bay window. Kale curled at Lyra's feet, his breathing slow and steady. When Maya finally stood to leave, she paused. You know you don't have to wear that armor all the time, Lyra stiffened, but Maya held up a hand, not saying you should take it off, just saying you don't have to be alone in it. Then she walked back to her ship without another word. Lyra stood there long after the Iron Lark undocked and vanished into the starfield. For the first time in a century, she touched her cheek and found it. Wetkal nudged her hand with his snout, his scales now a soft amber. She knelt and wrapped her arms around him. Maybe, she whispered. Maybe not. And, somewhere in the endless dark, a tiny human freighter carried a secret hope back into the void. The victory was not the end. It was only the beginning. The broadcast had spread like fire through the galactic networks. Every station, every ship, every colony now knew the truth of the Eldarin genocide. The Kthari Dominion could not hide it any longer, but truth alone does not bring peace. On. The Kthari homeworld riots broke out in the lower cities. Soldiers refused orders, citizens demanded justice, and the ruling council scrambled to silence the unrest with force. Yet the song would not stop. It played in dreams and data streams in the quiet moments between heartbeats. Vosk, the last Fang, survived his retreat, but he was disgraced, stripped of rank, and hunted by his own people for failing to erase the last witness. He did not care about honor anymore, only vengeance. From a hidden base in the void between galaxies, he gathered what remained of the Silent Claw loyalists, desperate and angry like him. They would not let an Eldarin and a human rewrite history. Meanwhile, aboard the Whisper of Dusk, Lyra tried to rest, but peace felt unfamiliar, like wearing clothes that did not fit. Maya worked day and night reinforcing the ship's defenses, installing new sensor arrays and upgrading the fusion core. Kyle stayed close to Lyra, his wounds healing, but his eyes always watching the Starsown evening as they shared a meal of roasted root vegetables and spiced broth. Maya said, they will come back. Lyra nodded. I know. Do you think we are ready? Lyra looked at her armor, now a blend of moonsteel and human alloy. At Kale curled at her feet at Maya's steady hands. We are not alone anymore. That makes us ready. 2 weeks later, the attack came not with ships but with silence. The comms went dead first, then the long-range sensors, then the stars themselves seemed to dim as if something vast and dark had swallowed. The light. Kale growled low in his throat, his scales shifting to deep violet, the color of warning. They are using a void shroud. Lyra said, an old Kthari weapon that bends space and blocks signal. Showed. Do we fight what we cannot see? We listen, Lyra said. She closed her eyes and placed a hand on the floor of the ship, feeling the hum of the engines, the pulse of the core, the whisper of the stars beyond. Then she felt it, a ripple in the fabric of space, a distortion moving closer. They are here. Maya sprang into action, activating the emergency protocols she had built into the ship's systems. Hidden turrets rose from the hull shield. Emitters flared to life, and the fusion core surged with power. But the Kthari were ready. 3 hunter vessels emerged from the shroud, sleek and black like knives. They fired not with energy beams but with gravity. Lances, weapons designed to crush ships from the inside out. The Whisper of Dusk shuddered under the assault bulkheads, groaned, and lights flickered. Cale did not wait for orders. He shot from the hangar, his body a streak of fire through the dark. He dodged the first lance and slammed into the lead hunter, his claws tearing through its spine, his breath melting its core. But there were too many. A second lance struck the Whisper of Dusk directly the impact, throwing Lyra and Maya to the floor. Maya scrambled to the console, blood trickling from her temple shields at 30%. Lyra stood, her armor glowing with strain. We cannot win this way. Then we change the rules, Maya said, her eyes lighting up with an idea. What if we do not fight them? What if we show them? Show them what? The truth again. But not just the past. The presently, Ray. Understood. You want to broadcast from here now. Yes, while they are close, while they are listening. It was dangerous. The signal could be traced. It could draw more enemies. But it could also reach the hearts of those still fighting on the Cthari worlds. Lyra said. Maya rerouted all power to the comms array, linking it directly to Lyra's neural interface, so her thoughts, her memories, her pain could flow into the broadcast. Lyra closed her eyes and began. Not with a song this time, but with a story. She spoke of her childhood under the twin moons of Eldara, of her first flight with Cale, of the day the sky turned red with fire. She spoke of the faces of those lost, not as victims, but as people who laughed, who loved, who dreamed. And then she spoke of May, of a human woman who came not with weapons but with cocoa and kindness, who saw her not as a relic but as a person who stayed when she could have left. The broadcast pulsed through the void. Ra and Riel, on the lead hunter vessel, a young Cthari pilot, froze, his hands hovering over the fire controls. He had been told the Eldarans were monsters, that they deserved to die. But this voice, this sorrow, this love, it did not sound like a monster. Around him other pilots hesitated. Vosk screamed over, the comms, fire now. But his orders were ignored. One by one the hunter vessels powered down their weapons. Cale landed on the hull of the nearest ship. Not to attack, but to watch, his eyes meeting the pilots through the viewport. The pilot slowly raised a hand in surrender. Vosk roared in fury and turned his ship to flee, but the void shroud failed without the others to maintain it, and the stars returned. Maya slumped in her chair, exhausted but smiling. It worked. Lyra helped her up her own body. Trembling with fatigue, they chose to listen. In the aftermath, the hunter crews surrendered peacefully. Many of them joined the growing resistance against the old regime they brought with them. Data logs, confessions, and names of those responsible. Cale returned to the ship, his scales now a soft gold, but he moved slowly, his left wing still healing from the last battle. Lyra met him at the hangar door and knelt. You gave them a choice, she said, and they chose better. Cale nudged her hand, then turned to Maya and pressed his forehead to hers again, deeper, this time longer. A full bond oath, not just of loyalty but of family. Maya wrapped her arms around his neck, tears in her eyes. Guess I really am stuck with you two. Halira smiled and placed a hand on both of them. Always the coalition offered Lyra a seat on the High Council, a title. A fleet of her own she refused. I am not a leader, she told the envoy. I am a witness and a gardener. Maya laughed when she heard that. A gardener, as Lyra said, someone has to plant seeds in the ruins, so they began to rebuild not just the Whisper of Dusk but something new. They welcomed others to the ship, refugees from war zones, lost souls from broken worlds, even a few Cthari who sought forgiveness. Lyra taught them. Eldaran Starlore. Maya taught them how to fix engines and grow food. Kyle watched over them all, his presence a quiet comfort. One night, as they sat on the observation deck watching a new nebula bloom in colors no language could name, Maya said, Do you think your people would be proudly? I looked at the garden below where children of many species played among the glowing flowers. I think they would say we did well. Maya leaned her head on Lyra's shoulder. We did, and in the quiet that followed, no, one felt alone. Daniel stood at the edge of the crater on Mars, the red dust swirling around his boots like rust-colored smoke. The sky was a pale orange, streaked with the contrails of human ships still holding position above. They had come from everywhere, Jupiter's moons, the belt, even old Earth itself, drawn not by orders or fear but by something quieter, something they could not name. Lyra stood beside him, her silver-veined skin catching the weak sunlight, her eyes fixed on the ancient vault entrance half buried in the sand. Ember lay at her feet, his obsidian scales dull, his breathing shallow. The little dragon had given almost everything to get them here. The Kavor dreadnought hung in orbit, silent now. It had stopped firing, stopped moving. But Daniel knew it was still watching, waiting. The enemy had not been defeated. Not yet. Lyra turned to him. Her voice was soft, barely louder than the wind. This place holds the last song of my people, she said. Not a weapon, not a shield, just a memory. A feeling, Daniel frowned. A feeling won't stop them. Maybe not, she replied. But your people gave me an idea. You humans. You cry at sunsets. You write poems about broken hearts. You build statues to strangers who showed kindness. You find beauty in things that serve no purpose. That is not weakness. That is power. Ember lifted his head weakly and let out a low rumbling purr. Lyra knelt and placed her palm on his snout. A faint glow spread from her fingers into his scales. He is the key, she said. But he cannot open the vault alone. He needs a spark. Not from me. From you. Me? Daniel blinked. I'm just a salvage tech. I fix pipes and reroute power cells. I don't know your songs or your magic. You don't need to, Lyra said. You only need to remember what you felt when you saw me for the first time. Not as a mystery, not as a threat, but as something beautiful. Daniel looked away, embarrassed. He remembered that moment on the station, the way her eyes held galaxies, the quiet grace in her movements, the sadness beneath her stillness. He hadn't thought much of it then. Just an honest reaction. But now he understood. It wasn't just about looks. It was about seeing someone fully without wanting to take or control or use them. That was rare. Maybe even sacred. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. What do I do? Stand with us, Lyra said. And feel. She placed one hand on Ember's side and reached the other toward Daniel. After a pause, he took it. Her skin was cool but not cold. Alive. Ember closed his eyes. The ground beneath them began to hum. Deep below the surface, something woke up. The vault doors, carved with spirals that looked like frozen music, slowly parted. Light spilled out, not harsh or blinding, but warm like dawn after a long night. Inside, the air shimmered with colors that had no names. Floating crystals pulsed gently, each holding a fragment of Siltheri life. Laughter, lullabies, star maps drawn in scent, the sound of rain on silver leaves. This was not a library of data. It was a library of feeling. Lyra walked in, Daniel following, Ember dragging himself behind. At the center of the chamber stood a single pedestal. On it rested a smooth, teardrop-shaped stone that glowed faintly blue. This is the heart song, Lyra whispered. It holds the essence of who we were. Not warriors, not scholars, just lovers of beauty. She placed her hands on the stone. Nothing happened. It's not responding, she said, her voice tight with fear. It needs more. Daniel looked around. What if it's not about you? What if it's about all of us? He tapped his comm. Hey, this is Daniel from the Wayfarer. If anyone can hear me, just think of something beautiful. Anything. A moment, a face, a smell, a song your grandma used to hum. Don't send data. Don't send weapons. Just send that. For a long moment, there was silence. Then a voice crackled through, gruff, tired, but clear. My daughter's first laugh. She's 6. Lives in New Seattle. I miss her. Another voice, younger. The way the ocean looked the day I learned to swim. Like liquid sky. A third. My dog waiting by the door every time I come home. Tail wagging like I'm the best thing in the world. One by one, voices filled the channel. Not commands. Not strategies. Just memories. Small, human, perfect moments. And as they spoke, the stone began to glow brighter. Ember lifted his head. His scales flickered with golden light. Lyra's eyes widened. They're doing it. They're giving us their spark. She closed her eyes and began to sing, not in words but in tones that bent the air. Ember joined her, his rumble harmonizing with her voice. Daniel didn't sing. He just stood there thinking of his mother's hands kneading bread, of the way stars looked from the roof of his childhood home, of the quiet courage in Lyra's eyes when she trusted him. The light from the stone expanded, filling the chamber, then bursting out through the vault entrance. It shot into the sky like a silent explosion of color. Ribbons of gold, violet, and emerald spiraled upward, wrapping around the Kavor dreadnought. On the bridge of the alien warship, the Kavor commander, a being of fused metal and cold logic, felt something unfamiliar. A vibration in its core. Not pain, not error. Something softer. It accessed its memory banks and found nothing, no record of this sensation. Then from the human broadcast it heard a child's voice. I drew a picture of the moon for my teacher. She hung it on the wall. The commander paused. For the first time in 10,000 cycles it hesitated. The light touched the ship's hull. Not burning. Not breaking. Transforming. The sharp edges softened. The black armor bloomed with patterns like vines. Inside, the biomechanical soldiers stopped moving. Their glowing red eyes dimmed, then shifted to a gentle blue. One reached up and touched its own face as if discovering it for the first time. On Mars, Daniel watched the dreadnought change. It didn't explode. It didn't flee. It simply became something else. Something alive in a new way. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted but smiling. Ember curled around her, his scales now shimmering with soft rainbow hues. The vault's light faded, but the feeling remained. A quiet hum in the air, like the world had taken a deep breath and decided to be kind. Days later, the first Cavor emissary landed on Mars. It walked on two legs now, its form more organic, its voice gentle. It bowed to Lyra and said, "We remember beauty. Thank you for reminding us." Human ships began ferrying the changed Cavor to quiet places. Forests, oceans, deserts, so they could learn what it meant to feel wonder. Scientists were baffled. Politicians were nervous. But poets? They understood. Daniel stood with Lyra on a hill overlooking the new settlement. Ember dozed in the sun, his wings twitching in a dream. "You know," Daniel said, "I still think you're beautiful." Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of stars and something warmer. "And I still think your species is a miracle," he smiled. "We're just people." "No," she said softly. "You are the ones who look at the unknown and say you are beautiful instead of, you are mine. That is not just people. That is hope." Far above, a human ship passed by, its hull painted with flowers. On the comm, someone was playing a violin. The notes drifted down like rain. And for the first time in a long time, the universe felt less like a battlefield and more like a home.